What are we going to talk about today? I think our audience needs to have a little story, something they can comment on. We encourage the comments, like and subscribe, do all of that stuff for us. And I mean, we give way too much detail at time, but here's one you can ponder. We've been looking at the different magazines in the Apollo missions. So we'll pick Apollo 12. Each of the two missions, they each have one magazine for each astronaut for EVA 1 and EVA 2. So you and I, Robert, we're going to go on a hike. We're going to go on a scenic tour. You have a camera and I have a camera. Okay. And this is film camera.
Oh,
Okay.
film.
Not like Dave, like, because he doesn't know anything about film. Now, these magazines, this film is prepared so that each slide is numbered. And you can see in the Apollo stuff, they're even handwritten the numbers on it, right? If you go to March the Moon, you can see the handwritten photo number right on there.
Yes.
So you have a magazine in your camera, and it goes from 001 to 150. And my magazine starts at 151 to 300. So the two of us are out on a walk, and we're each taking pictures through right there. So we spend, half a day. We each use the magazines up and take all the pictures. We develop it, and here's the trip going on. So when you're looking through it, you put that in one folder and start looking through the pictures. You're going to see Robert's magazine starts out at the start of our trip. We're going on a hike. It's going to start at the very start. And when you get to photograph 150, that's going to be the end of the trip. And then when you go to 151, because mine's numbered, just like the Apollo ones are numbered, it should start out at the start of the trip. And when you get to image 300 in that folder, that's going to be the end of the trip. But when you go to the Apollo, we'll use Apollo 12 because there's just two magazines for each EVA. When you go to Apollo 12 and you look at the magazines, they're starting out with magazine 46. Halfway through, magazine 46 goes through all of the images on magazine, go through halfway through the EVA, and magazine 47 goes through the second half of the EVA. So one astronaut having a camera has not taken a picture. They're only using one camera. And what they're trying to do is document an event. But here's the unusual part. If you were on the lunar surface, and I'm saying if, which didn't happen, and you're in a suit with heavy gloves, Marcus Allen always said, like, heavy like gardening gloves. They're actually heavier than that, and then they're under pressure. You can't feel anything. You're in a vacuum. You can't hear anything. This thing is mounted on your chest, so you can't see that it has taken a picture. You have no idea that the camera is actually working. You hope that it's working. That's why they had two cameras. So each one of them should have shot photographs for the entire EVA, but that didn't happen. The first half of the EVA is on one magazine, and the second half is on the next magazine
Well,
in
that's
there.
very strange. How can you have half of an EVA on one and half on the other when both of you have cameras?
That's right. But this is consistent. This is the second EVA in Apollo 12 is exactly the same way. One magazine is shooting the first half of their trip, and the other is shooting the second. And they are taking pictures of each other. And of course, they claim that they pass the camera back and forth. That's okay. But why are they not using the two? Because they really don't know if that camera is actually operating. They can't hear it. They're in a
Well,
vacuum.
even if the number counter is going and you can see that on the side, that still doesn't mean you've actually taken an image.
Oh, the
You
film
still
could have
don't know.
broken.
Yeah, it could have broke. Or the shutters could have cold welded themselves together.
Exactly.
Just like the drill did to the mast on the ISS. Remember that one? The
Yeah.
guy goes and he takes a socket and he twists it onto the drill there and he just like this. All of a sudden he's just trying to get the drill off. Well,
Yeah.
it's now a permanent part of that space station. That's
Yeah.
the funny thing. You're never getting that back off. And guess what? If you try to saw it off, The saw blade's going to cold weld to the drill, and then the drill's now cold welded to the mast, and anything else you add to it, it's going to just pile up and pile up, and now you're going to have what you call modern art. And guess how much they could sell that for? As long as you come with one of those big pair of snippers that the astronauts did and they cut the little camera off of the surveyor, now you can just add that to the pile.
Yeah,
Because those bolt cutters would have cold welded when they snipped that camera off.
exactly. And people need to understand that cold welding is a stronger weld. One of the biggest things about welding is foreign material, and of course oxidation degrades a weld, even the best welders. That's why they use nitrogen gas over it, to get rid of the oxygen so you have a stronger weld.
Yeah, but what's interesting is when you take a look at the cold welding phenomenon, I have a little clip and I'm going to show that. And what it shows is it actually shows two pieces of material becoming one at the molecular level.
Yes, as
Yes,
one.
as
That's what
one.
I mean. It makes a stronger weld.
So, how did those cameras function then?
Let's just say that there's a problem with the logic when you look at the magazines. Why is only one shooting halfway through? Why is one camera not being used?
Oh, I can tell you why, because I've had this in the comment section before. They say that what they did was they want to change the cameras around and change the film around. So they put the plate in there, slide it in, and then they can pull the cartridge off, put it on another camera, and then pull the plate out, and now you don't ruin the image. You still have a nice fresh plate there on the film. So if they keep passing this back and forth like this is how it's explained. But how are you going to keep doing that with those big gloves on like this?
However, there is a problem with those particular cameras. That slide is supposed to be removed before you put the cartridge on.
That's what it says on the top of the camera, but the
Yeah.
slide has to be in first before you remove the cartridge, or else you've just wrecked the shot.
Well, maybe that
You
was one of their modifications and they were counting on the original lead so it doesn't wreck the film, right? The original lead wraps around.
First of all, you have to black the film out, so that's what that slide's for.
That's right.
Yeah, you've just blacked it out. You black it out, you could take the cartridge off, move it somewhere else, and put it on the camera. And then once it's on the camera, now you can pull the slide out, and now you have it exposed.
But if you're on the moon and you are taking a cartridge off and you see all the dust that's on their suit, there's going to
Oh,
be
yeah.
dust all over that reso plate and you would see it, just like the orange juice. You're going to see it. It's going to be on there if they're changing cartridges on the fly like that. I mean, if they're handing the camera off back and forth, but that is illogical. The other astronaut has a camera to take the picture, but they're not using that camera. And the whole thing is, it's not just Apollo 12. All of the missions are exactly the same as that. And you can't say, oh, well, they adjusted it when they put it into a computer, when they uploaded it to a computer and put it on a website for it to look at, because March to the Moon is showing that's the actual film, or they're claiming that's the actual film with the photo numbers on the side, handwritten. A
Yeah,
lot of
but
them are
those are
handwritten.
dupes. Yeah, but those are dupes.
Yeah, but
They're
they're
dupes
taking
of
it
the
from the
original.
original film. They're handwriting it on there. The
Yeah.
number has to be there. You can't take it from another magazine and put it on there if they're claiming it's on the same film. So every one of the missions that are going out there, all of the missions are the same. One magazine shoots part of the mission and the other one's not being used, and then it goes on to the next one. It makes for a nice story, doesn't it?
Oh,
A
yeah.
beautiful story.
Well, there were only two magazines that were used for that particular EVA, right?
For Apollo 12, they just
Right.
used two magazines for the first EVA and two magazines for the second.
Right. So that's two, two, four. Yeah. So you have four
Yeah.
magazines total.
When you get into the other ones, they use more magazines, but it's exactly the same. They're only using one camera when there's two people with cameras. You're following the storyboard through using one magazine.
Yeah, but it's the same thing when you go to some of these magazines and you'll see them starting at the Earth, and they're in Earth orbit, low Earth orbit, And then you go a little further, and now they're at the moon, and then they're in orbit, and then all of a sudden they're on the surface, and then near the end of the magazine, they're back at Earth again. And yet, when you look at the sequence numbers, they're all in sequence. So I'd like to know how that's done.
That's Apollo 17 that does that. They've taken pictures and claimed that they put that magazine in one when they're orbiting, and then there's no reticules. There's no reso plate with reticules on the ones in
Right,
orbit.
which means that they've put the plate in there, then they've taken the film cartridge
Yeah.
out, moved it to another camera, and then pulled the plate out, and then they keep taking the
Yeah.
photographs. Yeah.
They're all jumbled up. But when they're on the surface taking pictures, they go in sequence on their trip. And that wouldn't happen with two people, each with a camera taking the images.
Well, maybe it had something to do with the radiation messing with their mind. Something like, for example, Starfish Prime. We were watching a video yesterday on this, and one scientist, at least the one I was watching, one of the scientists, he made a good point because he said, here they are. They're detonating these bombs 1962, Starfish Prime. And the guy made a good point. He says, now you've just added a third radiation belt, and it's highly active. Guess which Apollo mission went through the belts while they were still highly charged? And there was a third belt, highly charged. The Apollo missions.
Now, tell them about what Starfish Prime was designed to do. It was designed to stop any missiles from flying through it, that it would destroy the missiles flying through it. But that's the same radiation that the Van Allen belts have.
And those guys flew through that.
Yeah. So they put up and exploded a nuclear weapon 250 miles off the surface, was 1,500 miles south of Hawaii.
Yeah, the reason why I said 10 years, because according to that video, those belts were active from the time that bomb went off to 1972, which means all of those Apollo missions would have flown through those belts.
Yes. And that belt, that what they put up at 250 miles, migrated up into the Van Allen belts and excited the belts and kept them excited for that length of time.
And that's the first time I've ever seen a scientist make that claim that, hey, Apollo went through these belts. See, we didn't really think about this and say, oh, wait a minute. I wonder if those belts are highly charged still when Apollo went through it. And he says, of course they were for 10 years, which means that from 62 to 72, those belts were highly charged, worse than they normally are, which means that these Apollo astronauts went through it, which means that they would have definitely have had radiation poisoning. They would have been vomiting. They would have had stomach cramps. Their eyes would bleed.
It was designed to destroy the craft.
Right.
Any missile, anything flying through that from Starfish Prime was designed to destroy the missile going through it. Well, it's going to destroy their craft that they're in. It's not just going to kill them that way. It's going to destroy the vehicle that they're in.
Well, if they detonated in 62 and you're looking at 69, it would still be highly active.
Right. Well, even Apollo 8, 9, and 10.
Which means it would still be highly active in 69 to 72. But I was saying earlier, because we have Apollo 8, they claimed to send those 3 astronauts to the moon. They took the LEM down to so many miles above the surface. And then they came back and docked, and then they all lived happily ever after once they came back to the Earth. And yet, when was that bomb detonated? 62. And when was Apollo 8?
68.
There you go.
Yeah, they were so close they could have opened the door up, reached down, scooped up a soil sample, and gone back.
Yeah.
It's going to be active from the 250 miles out into the belts.
But Apollo 9 didn't go through the belts. Apollo 8 did. They say that's a different story. So now what's going to be their excuse this time, I wonder?
Actually, it'll be below 250 miles because that bomb is exploding. It's going out in all directions. So probably 100 miles out. The Starfish Prime was designed to destroy a nuclear missile.
So a nuclear missile comes flying in, and all of a sudden, the radiation is going to destroy the electronics and it's going to come tumbling out of the sky because there's no guidance system to turn the fins anymore.
Completely destroy it.
Yeah.
And, those big high tech computers that they had on board, they'd be destroyed as well on, the high tech ones in
Oh, yeah.
1969.
You mean the ones with the magnetic tape? Well, that's going to
Yeah,
do
yeah, the
really.
ones that weigh,
Oh, yeah.
like
Well,
a
that's
hard
the
drive weighs a metric ton.
Well, that's rope core memory we're talking about now, you know? I mean, they didn't need the little sense wire going all the way through it to read anything. I mean, all they were doing was flipping the magnetic charge this way and then this way. You got a one goes this way and you get a zero when it goes this way and it just keeps rotating and then your sense wire goes all the way through to read it. And then you have to have a reset, which means every time you reset the thing, you have to start all over again. This is the Apollo LEM 2.0 here.
Well, the reset button, you had to hold it for 15 seconds. So if you take a jukebox and you put 87, 45 this in it, and you hit the number from 1 to 87, it'll play the song for you because that's just what the read only memory did. You can't interact with it any other way.
No, but that's fine. How are you going to interact with that computer when you've gone through those highly charged belts that have been activated by this nuclear bomb, this nuclear detonation? What do you think it's going to do to that rope core memory?
And the batteries.
And the batteries. The rope core memory, I think, is going to get a nice clean wipe, and everything's going to go back to zeros. You go through that region, especially the third belt, which was a brand new one that they created, and now you're going to be traveling right through that belt and out the other side of it. Don't forget, you still have to come home, which means you have to come all the way back and go through it again. They're not getting sick. You've got to be kidding me.
They would last less than a minute.
And all these NASA proponents will say it's just a chest x-ray. Well, Jarrah proved that wrong. As a matter of fact, he proved it wrong in the video we just released the last week.
Yeah, well, what's going to happen
So,
inside the craft, anything that's penetrating that radiation that's penetrating through there, bouncing off the walls inside of the aluminum, you're going to have microwaves and x rays inside the craft bouncing around. So
is it gonna?
basically, you're just going to microwave yourself to death.
Well, that was a good example you gave yesterday of a light bulb. If you take a light bulb and you just leave it there and the light's going to be dissipating all over the place, but then take tin foil and hold it back from the light bulb with the shiny side, it's going to reflect the light. You could tune it. You could turn the light. You can reflect it here and there, just like a mirror.
But that's like a flashlight that has a little reflector in it to direct the light. Well, that's why the people that wear the tinfoil hats is trying to protect them from the stuff, but it's probably directing it into their brain. It just improves the signal for them.
Improves the signal, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
we certainly know who it could improve, especially when Professor Dave can't even get his maths right. You know, that's pretty bad for a professor who's on the Discovery Channel and has millions of subscribers. But people are going to listen to fellows like that because it sounds like they make sense and all these big fancy words. That's what people love to listen to, even though they don't have an attention span to absorb it. They still listen to it, and if it sounds good, if it sounds what they want to hear and it fits their little narrative, then they love it. But when you come along and you say, "Sorry guys, you've got this wrong and you've got that wrong," and you can prove it, they don't even want to listen to you.
No, I know. Like I'm just thinking of the Y file and the goldfish is wearing a tinfoil hat.
Who could we liken that goldfish to, I wonder?
People really need to understand about the photographic record. There's far too many quirks in there. And that's what we're talking about. This is just another quirk. It wouldn't happen. It is not logical to have two people with cameras and only use one and then the other. You're trying to document an event and you have no idea whether these cameras actually work. You're going to use both of them. And that's my point. And we want people to comment on it, on how illogical this is or how logical it is, or we want people out there that support NASA to explain exactly their thinking on.
It reminds me of this, though, it does. Let's say,
Control
for
check, all three.
example, we go
Roger. Clear
flying and
right.
you're
Initiating
coming with
takeoff
me
roll.
flying. You take a camera, I take a camera, but you're going to go your own way and I'm going to go my own way. And you're not going to wait until you come back to use your camera. You're going to go off and you're going to take your own pictures, even if you've just gone across the street.
That's right.
You're going to use that camera. And now these guys are not using the camera and they're doing the same thing. So that's like taking the camera, strapping it to your chest, but oh, wait a minute, I'm not going to use my camera until yours is finished, till all your film is spent. Then we'll use my camera. See, that makes no sense.
No, it
It
doesn't.
just doesn't make sense. Reality does not work that way. You're going to
No,
use the camera. You've got it strapped to your chest. You're going to use it. You're not going to just let it sit there until the other guy's film is completely spent. And then you're going to say, oh, well, I think we'll use mine now. Because these guys were taking pictures of each other. He was using that camera, snapping. He was using that camera. But then all of a sudden, you have two different magazines, but you're waiting till one EVA is complete and then you're using the other one on the other EVA. But you're not taking the same pictures with two different cameras on the same EVA. That's very strange.
yeah, like I said, the whoever is holding their camera, their documentation should be from the start of the EVA all the way to the end. And that's for both magazines. And that's not it. It's one magazine halfway through, and the other one is the other half of the way through. Right. And now you sit there and say, okay, here they are at Flagstaff out on a set. They've practiced 100 times. They've set up the stations there. They've created the cue cards. They know exactly to the minute when they're going to arrive at the set. That's already in the cue cards. They've already documented in the cue cards the type of material that they're gathering, the type of rocks. And in the cue cards, describe the mineral contents in a rock when they crack it open.
You see, I don't think people really understand when we're showing that image. You see, what they have to do is when I do show that image, let's just take a look at that and look at the material, the breccia, all the material that's in that rock. And they haven't even got there yet because those were done up 3 months in advance, which means that they cannot know what's in that rock that that guy's just cracking open with that little mattock. Oh, and that's there too. The size of the rock is even there. That's not possible.
And how did they know that they took the photographs from those different positions? That's in the cue cards as well. There's even one that says disturbed soil. How did they know they put a footprint there? It's in the cue cards, right? Too much information. They provided too much information.
Well, that's usually what happens with liars. If you ever go into an investigation and watch these professional interrogators, interrogate these people, they give so much information that it's all BS. And it's like this, and then they mix this up and they can't get this straight. But then you get other ones that can do it. Except the problem is now they're giving so much information that they've just given the whole thing away. And that's what this is like. They
That's
give
exactly
so
what
much,
they've done.
yeah, they give so much information in these cue cards, the press kits, all of it, that it's given it away. They're lying and it's given them away because normally you would not do that. You wouldn't need to do that. And same with Professor Dave. That was another good point because he would not waste all those hours making videos defending NASA if it was real. That's my point because you don't have to defend something that happened. World War II, for example, they have tanks that they made up out of plastic inflatable tanks, and they put them all over the battlefields so that when the Germans flew over, they would think there was a huge army down there, a huge military force. And we have images of all that. So are you going to say now that that didn't happen? Is that all fake too? Let's put it this way. They didn't have to. They didn't have to defend it. They just showed it and said, there you go. But they didn't go down. Well, let's see. The material of the tank was made out of unsynthesized polyvinyl chloride and this material, that material, and the weight, the valence numbers, factor number, all that stuff. They didn't have to write all that stuff down because they didn't need to. Apollo, on the other hand, has written down so much information, it's absurd. And it just wouldn't happen in the real world. That's my opinion.
Yeah, well, you see all the people that defend NASA, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we call them parrots. Well, the fact of the matter is a parrot never stops squawking.
Yeah.
That's it. And the more they defend them and try to come up with this stuff, and then you see NASA is turning around at the same time and they're updating their files. Why would you need to update a file on an event that happened? The facts are there and stated clearly if it was real. If you are reproducing that to show somebody, the facts will not change. NASA, everything about their equipment has changed. They've updated files. I don't know how many times, just even on just the legs of the lander itself.
Well, people will say to us, well, you don't show any evidence of it. I can't count how many videos we've shown, papers of
Over
them.
100.
Oh my God. I've got to a point where I'm not showing it anymore because there's at least 100 videos out there that we've repeatedly shown it over and over and over from not just one, two, three, four, five documents, but a whole plethora
Yep.
of documents that have done. They've taken the typeset, they've changed it, or they've changed a word, or they've changed it from black and white to color. And you'd think if they would change it from black and white to color, they'd keep it the same. But no, they change the words around. Why do you need to
Yep.
even do that?
That's right. The one thing that really gets me about people that defend NASA, if they watch what we do, they'll pick some little and create some straw man argument about it. But do we hear anything about the no compression on the legs on the lander?
No.
Do we hear anything about buzz? Do we hear anything about that wet flag? Do we hear anything about that can?
Or what about the Apollo 15 flag? By the way, I did a little analysis of that. He's just at the flag and it's already moving before he gets to the flag.
Yeah.
So how's that possible? You see,
Yeah.
they will make up all kinds of excuses, like the other one that I got. Oh, well, there was one astronaut inside the LEM that was venting it. Venting what? The door's open. How can you vent the door? The door's already open. The both of them are out there because you can see the two astronauts there. They're both there. So he's not venting anything because that would mean you would need a third astronaut in that LEM to vent the oxygen out.
Well, if you read all the documents, you see when they leave the LEM, they shut everything down. So it can't be automated release of anything, right? It can't be there. They can't have a release of gases
But
anywhere else.
no, but this is what Dave and Simon Dan and
I
Craig the
know.
Blinder and Dave McKeegan and Professor Dave, they all will refuse to show that Apollo 15. They'll show the same guys, the same astronauts holding the flag, and they'll be twisting it, and they'll say, see, the guys are saying it's blowing in the wind. No, you're showing the wrong image. You're not showing the right one. Why you won't show it? I'll tell you why you won't show it. Because it's too much controversy for your channel. And maybe, just maybe, some of your subscribers will start coming over and watching our videos, breaking that
Well, they
analysis down.
should. The other thing I was going to say is I don't know how many times we've posted the rover with the double rib on
Oh,
Apollo
yeah.
16. And every time it's been done, there's never been a comment about it
No.
because all the other rovers in there are showing that it only has a single rib on that fender. And Apollo 16, the rear right fender, the back section of it is missing. And we've shown that. And then again, now they're repairing it in Apollo 17. How did they get that rover? Like the
Well,
rover didn't come back with them.
no, but it's the same with the frames. How can you have one rover on the moon and have two different frames?
And tire tracks. And we've covered all that, and people don't respond to it.
No.
But what we do get is we get a guy like Kevin Conrad going, Artemis, Artemis, Artemis. And then he disappears when Artemis doesn't happen.
NASA themselves will tell you that, hey, if we have a program and we say it's going to launch in 2014, then you add 5 years to it. Well, 2019 came along. Did we see anything? No. And it's 2026. But here's the thing that gets me is that these guys say, okay, well, they don't have the money, the funding, and all this. But yes, they did because Donald Trump gave them the funding in his first term. And yet, how come they're still dicking around at fuel leaks and all this stuff? Starliner can't even make it to the ISS without leaking. And Boeing is the one who made the Saturn V. How can these guys get to the lunar surface 6 times in 5.5 months? Another rocket launches, another Saturn V launches, 5.5 months, another one, until we go get all the way up to Apollo 17. And yet they can't even get an Artemis vehicle with humans in it off the ground today. Now, there is something seriously wrong. And don't give us the excuse that it's new technology, because new technology that doesn't work, you go and you break out the old technology because that supposedly worked. And the old technology is now the new technology, and you build on that. But these guys, the engineers, did not build on it. That's why they have so many problems. And that's not the way reality works.